It's episode 18 with the Average Joe Sports Show. Chris Schmidt. We dive into Nebraska, Wisconsin.
Mitch Sherman here. The Big Ten and Jim Harbaugh have closure. What does it mean?
Hi, it's Bill Doleman. Nebraska has locked in Trev Alberts for the long term. That's a good move.
And before we get out of here, we're going to predict the weekend slate of college football.
Episode 18 is here. It's the Average Joe Sports Show. Bill Doleman, Mitch Sherman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Make sure you follow us. Subscribe on YouTube, the AJ Sports Show. On Twitter, can find us, the AJ Sports Pod. Spotify and Apple iPlay is where you can download the pod. Fellas, it is Wisconsin week. And Mitch, is there some, I don't want to say PTSD, but you have the old Luke Fickell v. Nebraska. He's done it before.
Yeah, we'll start off the show by talking about Luke Fickell coming to Nebraska in 2011 because, hey, you know, what's more relevant this week than that?
I know.
That was the only Ohio State team. I'm just looking this up, looking at the Ohio State. If you want a little bit of a dose of sober reality, Nebraska, at Ohio State, other than 2020 when the Buckeyes were 7-1 in the shortened season, that 2011 season when Luke Fickell was the coach of the Buckeyes is the only year since 2005 that Ohio State has not won double-digit games. So 10 wins or more in the last, and they're now at 10 wins this year. So the last 19 seasons with the exception of 2020 and 2011. And Nebraska did not treat Luke Fickell all that nicely at Memorial Stadium on that day. Elijah, you were there.
I was there. I was in 7th grade. And I was sitting up in Northwest Stadium, so my family had season tickets at the time, which had me in 5th grade through 7th grade or 8th grade very excited. I was very happy about that. We're up in Northwest Stadium. It was my dad, myself, my brother, and then my uncle who's in town from Denver, his first Husker game in like 10 years. And Nebraska finds themselves down big at the half. There's like light rain falling in the stadium. It's absolutely miserable.
Those were tears.
You could argue. You could make the argument. And my dad is like at the half, like, you guys just want to go? Like, this game sucks. Like, Ohio State's kicking our ass. Like, you guys just want to go? And I remember sitting there and fighting for it. Be like, no, we're not going to leave. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. My uncle, it's like one of the only Husker games he's been to in the past 2 decades probably. And he was ready to go, but I convinced him, like, we're going to stay. We're gonna stick it out, and then we got to see the biggest comeback in Memorial Stadium history. So, a lot of fun.
But nobody got their newspaper that day because Elijah took the day off to go to the football game. Now, was that the Jim Tressel suspension? Was that Tattoo-gate?
That was season. Mm-hmm.
Well, I certainly hope Ohio State learned their lesson from Tattoo-gate that year, that Luke Fickell was the head coach.
Yeah, because they upgraded a year later.
How about that? You can look back on that and say that cost a guy his job, and now the things that happen in college football and don't cost anybody anything.
Yeah. Now you got NIL deals at tattoo parlors probably in Columbus, right?
Oh, for sure, man. So recruiting, that's an above board recruiting pitch. You know, you can own the tattoo parlor if you want if you go to Ohio State or any other school.
Get inked. Well, we don't know who's going to be starting at quarterback for Nebraska. We know that Heinrich Haarberg's available per Matt Rule's availability on Thursday. And quarterback, guys, is such a key. It's been a key, and it's been an Achilles heel for Nebraska, Bill.
Well, as long as that Achilles heel isn't injured, right?
Sure.
Isn't one of the injuries. Look, it's been I'm sure this has been a kind of a tumultuous week in the Nebraska offensive meeting rooms about the play calling, second guessing, behind the scenes, and then what are we going to do and who are we going to play and what kind of game plan can we have when we get to Wisconsin? Is it going to be Chubba? Is it going to be Heinrich? Is it going to be Jeff Sims? None of them are healthy physically or perhaps mentally. I don't really know if Nebraska probably can go in with a solid game plan into Wisconsin, because if it's going to be one guy, can it be the same for all? Or is it one for Haarberg, one for Sims? Although, Mitch, I think you kind of alluded to it earlier in the week. I don't know how Nebraska plays him and Purdy probably is the one most eager to play, but that mysterious groin injury that apparently is a lot more severe than anybody has been led to believe during the course of the season. What can you do with him if it's a full game of action? That's going to flare up at some point.
Yeah, it's a matter of how much uncomfortableness he can take. Talking about Chubba Purdy, and I think as the game goes on, if he's somebody who's out there for 50 or 60 reps, then you might see his effectiveness wane as you get into the second half, and it's going to be cold on Saturday night. Now, I can't say that I've ever played Big Ten football with a groin injury or a sports hernia, as it apparently is bothering Chubba. And those things have been around for a long time, going back to the Frank Solich years when they mysteriously talk about mystery with those is they just kind of came out of nowhere, those kind of injuries, and Nebraska suffered a lot of those things. I know players that know of players who went to Germany to get the surgery because there's apparently one doctor over there who fixes that injury the best. So best wishes to Chubba in getting that corrected in the offseason. I don't know if he's going to be speaking Deutsch on his
update that passport
medical journey, but we'll find out. Regardless, this is maybe the first game of the season where I think I'm going to walk into the stadium and not have a real good sense of what Nebraska's plan is at quarterback, at least as far as who the guy is going to be. When they made the switch to Harbaugh, it was fairly clear that was going to happen. And then I never really had a whole lot of doubt in the weeks after that he was going to remain the starter. But this one, they may have plans to play more than one guy. For the first time this season, they really may have plans to play multiple quarterbacks, maybe even all three, if the situation presents itself at Wisconsin.
Well, and do you guys remember, Mitch, you mentioned the specialist in Germany who does this hernia surgery. Do you guys remember, it's about 10 years ago now, a Norris basketball player, Dylan Bolke was his name. He went off to Germany, went and got the hernia surgery before his senior year, and worked out great for him. So there is a Nebraska tie right there. I just remember that 10 years ago. Probably exactly my freshman year of high school. He went off and got the surgery and ended up doing great. So maybe Chubba's got a spot he can stay with Sam Griesel. I'm not sure how close they are. But go crash on his couch for a couple weeks, get the surgery done, and come on back.
But the thing is, they need it done like yesterday. Okay, they got Wisconsin on Saturday.
Fast forward the recovery.
We need that to have been taken care of prior to mid-November. But again, I go back to the microcosm of the final sequence of plays in the last game. If they want to run that play and do what they did it with a guy who had not been playing all season long. Yes, that's okay. That's a great play to run. It was ill-advised. You can't do the same things with all three guys. Each one brings a different thing to the table. Each one also brings a different injury to the table. So I don't know how you plan with Heinrich Harbaugh the same game plan with Chubba Purdy and the same game plan with Jeff Sims. So as mystified as you will probably be, Mitch, when you walk into Camp Randall, I would think that Nebraska has three different binders trying to figure out, well, let's make sure they're color-coded so we know which one to use when the certain quarterback is in.
Yeah, it may just be a game plan where you have a strategy for each of the three, but you just don't know when you're going to have to go to that strategy. And if Chubba starts, it's possible that he's not able to go out there for the second drive just because he's in pain or something isn't right. So then you have to go to plan B more quickly than you thought. But it's a challenge for Marcus Satterfield. And I know that probably leaves a lot of Nebraska fans feeling very comfortable going into this game, that he's got bigger challenges on his plate than just calling winning plays. But he does in this one because you don't know necessarily who's going to be taking the snaps.
This could get real simple if Nebraska's offensive line and running game is up to the challenge where you turn and hand off. I mean, you've had a back in Emmett Johnson that's continued to go the right direction with his carries, yards per carry, and he's looked the part as far as really being comfortable as RB1. You have an offensive line that has put together a couple of decent weeks. I know they weren't at their best against Sparty, but they really responded well last week. And as we look at Wisconsin's deficiencies, it's not the same old Wisconsin. I mean, it's a different defense. It's a 3-3-5 situation with them defensively, and it's not this crazy attacking off the edge, just raise hell defense that Wisconsin's known for. They're barely in the top 10 rushing defense-wise. I mean, there's your answer, guys. If Nebraska can go do it, just limit what you ask your quarterback to do.
Yeah, the top 10 of the Big Ten you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Typically, they're top 10 nationally, but at least that's my feel with them. Every time they play Nebraska, they look top 10 nationally. But in the league, yeah, they're right in at number 9, Big Ten-wise, against the run.
Yeah, it's a different kind of Wisconsin team for sure. And you see Wisconsin coming off of a loss at home against Northwestern that wasn't even as close as the final score indicated. But Wisconsin lost by a couple of touchdowns and was out of that game in the entire second half. And previous to that, a loss against Indiana. And I think we hit a little bit of this on Monday, so I won't get too deep into it. But I just have real questions about where Wisconsin is at from a mentality standpoint and if the Badgers are going to be ready to play this game. And I had a chance to visit this week with Jesse Temple, our Wisconsin beat writer from The Athletic. And Jesse and I have a piece that's out on Friday on the site that just kind of assesses both of these teams. And it's interesting to think that 5 team and then another 5-5 team, and they could not really be in much different places as far as the psychological aspect of things. Now, I'm not suggesting that Nebraska's, squeaky clean and is going into this game with nothing on its mind other than the best thoughts. But compared to where Wisconsin's at, I mean, Nebraska's kind of riding on a cloud, so to speak, with its 5-5 record. I get the sense out of Nebraska camp that yes, sure, they're bothered by the way things went against Maryland, and they're bothered by the way things went against Michigan State, but they're just as resolute in their feelings about having a chance to win this game as they would be if they were coming into it at 7-3. The same can't be said for Wisconsin.
Wisconsin's fragile, and that just seems so odd to think of because they've been such a stable program for so long under Barry Alvarez, and yeah, they had some coaching changes, and the Gary Anderson thing didn't work out very well, but for the most part, there have been a model of stability in the Big Ten, and maybe that one team that is more of a trademark of the Big Ten, just big bruising offensive lines and run the football, and everything it's cold there from August until August, and it's just the prototypical Big Ten football program. And then when they hired Luke Fickell, everybody said that's a really good hire. People in Nebraska, you wanted Fickell, now we're getting stuck with Matt Rule. But then when you started hearing about, they want to put the air raid in, and they're not bringing Jim Leonard back, and they're going to be doing this, and it is very reminiscent of the Callahan days, back at Nebraska. Like, we are going to do what we're going to do, and eventually it's going to work. Matt Rule has come in and, tried to massage some things with what they have. And I think you're right, Mitch, that mentally Nebraska probably, resolute's a great word, resilient, that even in spite of diversity, there's still a purpose to why they're playing. You got the sense listening to Wisconsin and after the game against Northwestern and earlier this weekend, I thought maybe this week could be a little bit different, but there's still this air of quit with that program right now, that if I don't think they're going to get down early, that Nebraska can bury them. But boy, is there much want-to there?
A couple things about Wisconsin. One, it's senior day, and maybe that's overblown. But I do think that your older players in that kind of a situation, you're going to get their best effort coming out of the gate. This is the last time that those players on this Wisconsin roster have a chance to play at Camp Randall Stadium. So whatever kind of doldrums existed or may have existed last week when they were out there against Northwestern and got shocked like that, don't expect to see that kind of an attitude from the Badgers this week. And then the other thing that kind of catches me for a minute when I begin to believe that maybe Wisconsin is down and out, and I do think they're hurting. This is a team that on October 28th took Ohio State into the fourth quarter, and it was a 24-10 final. But I don't know that any version of Nebraska in 2023 is taking Ohio State into the fourth quarter of a game. So one thing I will say about Wisconsin and feel confident in saying it, is that the Badgers' ceiling is considerably higher than what Nebraska's ceiling is. Nebraska just needs to find a way to get Wisconsin to play pretty far below what that ceiling is, and that's what we've seen from Wisconsin the last couple of weeks.
Well, and one of the things that I said yesterday on our Hail Varsity show was that this Wisconsin team, whenever you just look at it on paper, probably has the best quarterback in the Big Ten West in Tanner Mordecai, at least the most proven there, and I think he really passes the eye test. Arguably the best running back in the Big Ten West in Braylon Allen. His health is a big question mark, but he's been impressive for years, and he's been impressive whenever they've fed him the ball this season. An above-average offensive line and probably one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten West, and a defense that should be good enough with the pieces they have on offense to make it work, to hold the opposition to less than 24 points, because that's what you'd expect that Wisconsin team to put up. But it's felt a lot of times this season like square peg round hole with that Wisconsin team. With the pieces that they have, it does not feel like they're running a scheme either offensively or defensively that fits the pieces that they have. I mean, you look at their wide receiver core, it's not what they'd like it to be with a quarterback like Tanner Mordecai. They're not feeding Braylon Allen the ball. I think he's rushed more than 20 times in a game, only twice this season. Both times they won, but usually he's between that 12 to 16 carries in a game, which is not what we've known Braylon Allen to be over the past couple years. It just doesn't feel like they're taking the strengths of that offense from a personnel standpoint and making it the strengths of their offense from a scheme standpoint.
Yeah, well, one thing about the air raid offense that you just don't find real often is a team that just hangs its hat on a running back the way that Wisconsin has over the years. Mm-hmm. I mean, perhaps like at Oklahoma when they were running some of the Mike Leach stuff and they had Adrian Peterson, same era of football. You have that great of a back, you're going to ride him. But air raid, is more situational with the running backs, and they haven't gotten the most out of Braylon Allen, who is now injured and questionable, I suppose, going into Saturday.
Nebraska's defense, let's flip it around. You mentioned the personnel that Wisconsin has, and Mordecai is back. And guys, it looked like the flipping point of the season is going to be the Illinois game for both teams. Nebraska had their goal line stand, won, and then went on a win streak. Wisconsin's lost 3 in a row, and it would have been 4 in a row had they not had some heroics against their old ball coach. And it looked like that moment, okay, that was really danger zone for Wisconsin. They found a way, and then they just get hit and don't respond against Indiana. They get rocked last weekend by Northwestern, who's super galvanized and playing good football each week. And right now, you just wonder where Wisconsin's going to show up. With Nebraska's defense, they've showed up about every week. They weren't at their best against Sparty, but when push came to shove, they got after it in the fourth quarter. Does Nebraska have some advantages? Yes, they stopped the run, but as much as Wisconsin's going to throw the football, Mitch, does Nebraska have something up their sleeve pass rush-wise? Pressure's always been key, and Nebraska's not been able to just do it with 4. Is the matchup favorable? How do you see that for Nebraska-Wisconsin this week, the Black Shirts?
Big thing is getting Quentin Newsome back, and Nebraska missed him dearly against Maryland last week. And you can say, well, Maryland only got 13 points, but the one touchdown was on a drive where Maryland went and picked on Malcolm Hartzog, who's been playing safety all year and was filling in at that corner spot for Quentin Newsome, who was out with a shoulder injury suffered in the week ahead of the Maryland game. And perhaps that doesn't happen if Quentin is out there, and it's a different ball game if Maryland doesn't score that touchdown late in the first half last week. So I think the presence of Quentin Newsome is huge, and there was also a pass interference call on Tommy Hill late in the game. So that cornerback spot was like the 1 point for Nebraska in the game, and Hill is a starter opposite Newsome, so that maybe still happens. I just mean the position last week was exposed a little bit for Nebraska on Maryland's key scoring drives, two of its 3 scoring drives. The other scoring drive, I think, covered very few yards, if any at all. So, one good thing for Nebraska, in addition to having Newsome seemingly ready to play in this one, is just the kind of play that we've seen out of the defensive line. In particular, those 2 big guys in the middle, the older guys, Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher. They are playing their best football of the season right now, and that's not always something that you can expect from a defensive lineman when you get into week 11, week 12 now. But I think the way that Tony White and give credit to Terrence Knighton too, the defensive line coach, the way that they have used those players this year and rotated. We talked about that early in the season. They're rotating players. They're playing 7 defensive linemen, 8 defensive linemen. It's really showing up now because there isn't the same kind of wear and tear that you might normally have in mid-November on those big D linemen. And they are able to generate some pass rush that maybe Nebraska hasn't been able to produce in the past, right from the center of that D line.
That goes all the way back to that Minnesota game when they put their cards on the table and said, we're going to play 25 guys in that opening game. And you had so many true freshmen that it had an impact early and continued to. And I agree, Robinson, for the most part, I think most of the season it's been Huntmaker's defense. Robinson in the last couple of weeks has been right alongside of him, and I'm not sure Nebraska's had a defensive tackle pair like those two. And you got to go back maybe a couple of decades to have that kind of 1-2 punch along the defensive line. But to think of what Van Poppel has done and Lenhart has also done, those two guys giving some depth, athleticism, because they're different than Hutmacher and Robinson. And then you've got those guys on the ends. Butler was fantastic last week against Maryland. And Marquise Buford coming back had a big play. What was it, toward the end of the first half that knocked them out of
blitz sack.
Yeah, that took them out of field. So there's so many guys defensively that, and it all starts with those two guys, that you've got those other players making plays because those two guys clog up and they occupy so much of the defensive the offensive lines. You know, they fight through double teams, and it's fun to watch a defensive line like that. I mean, that's a highlight. Those guys are the highlight makers on that Nebraska defense. Now, they're going up against a very good offensive line, or typically what's a good offensive line with Wisconsin. So, again, it just is going to be a matter of guys making plays, and Newsome coming back is absolutely critical if he does.
I'm interested to see, and you're right on with Butler, how he continues to flash. Had a great first half. But how about Buda Wright? I mean, he's a guy that has seen time, and it's not that he disappears, but he'll get more plays in some games than others. But his impact was just incredible, and his confidence with all he's been through injury-wise has to be sky high. Not only that circus interception he had, but the fumble. And I think there's a little bit of blood in the water that the defense likes right now, where they've been challenged enough to go force some turnovers. Well, they really had to do it to get their team in the game, at least set up the offense last week. Is problematic as Wisconsin's been with scoring, and they've been kind of hot and cold with it with this new system and transition and personnel. I really think that this could be a game where Nebraska's defense has an encore act with some forced turnovers. You know, let's just plan on 2 on a good day for the Nebraska offense, one way or the other, a fumble or an interception. If they can mitigate some of those and just keep it lower, that'd be ideal. Don't know if it'll happen, but you flip it around. If the defense can keep you even or go +1 for you, that may be the difference Saturday night.
Yeah, that was the big difference, I think, between Nebraska's defensive performance against Michigan State and then Maryland. In Michigan State, no turnovers generated, and then Maryland, you had 3 that the defense came up with. And Javen Wright, like you said, was a part of 2 of those turnovers with the pick and then the fumble at the goal line. I think if Nebraska doesn't get those turnovers, and the score of that game is clearly different, and we're not looking at this Maryland game and saying, hey, that was a bounce back from the defense. The reason that it looked that way and felt that way for Nebraska is almost entirely because of the turnovers. It isn't that they played poorly outside of that, but the yardage and really everything else that we saw from the defense, aside from the creating the turnovers, was very similar between those 2 games. So that's what Nebraska has to build on going into Wisconsin. And if this is a team, which we think it is for the Badgers, that's bruised mentally, that confidence-wise, then seemingly it's leaving itself open to some plays that just kind of go in the downhill, like the avalanche kind of way for them, and that may show itself as turnovers created by the Nebraska defense. So yeah, I'm with you. That's a huge key to this game, and really the biggest thing that the defense has to do. I think 10 games into the season, 11 games into the season, we know what we're going to get from the Black Shirts as far as their ability to stop the run. Melvin Gordon's not showing up to run for 400 yards on Saturday night, but whether they get the turnovers or not, that kind of makes or breaks the day for the Black Shirts.
That can absolutely flip it. It's the Average Joe Sports Show, episode 18. That's Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe there. The AJ Sports Shows, what you type in to watch. YouTube is where you can watch, as I said. Then the Twitter handle is the AJ Sports Pod. Spotify and iTunes for the download. Take us with if you're headed out, and let us know what you think on a review. Guys, a nice extension for Trev Alberts this week, an 8-year number for him, upwards of $18 to $21 million with bonuses worked in there for Trev. And you have Ted Carter making this extension before he finds his way to Columbus. And for the most part, I think the Nebraska football fans are like, great, keep Trev around. There's been some chatter about, well, you have the university in a hole, and yet you're spending this much money on the AD. But hey, Trev's done great work so far at Nebraska, and it looks like he'll continue to do so on top of the projects he's trying to get hammered out for that south end zone. So no problem with it on my end. And Trev's a guy who wants to be in Lincoln for a long time. This makes sure it happens.
I just appreciate Ted Carter making sure that Nebraska locked him up before Ted Carter got to Ohio State and tried to hire Trev away to replace Gene Smith, who was retiring as the athletic director at Ohio State. So that was his way of saying, I'm out the door, but I'm not going to take your AD with me. Not that I would think Trev Alberts would leave Nebraska for any other institution. I would have a hard time believing that when the news came out that the guy at Arizona State is retiring and resigning, we want to make sure we keep Trev locked up so he doesn't go to ASU.
Right.
I don't think that was going to happen. Maybe there is something where Trev would be a favored candidate for another position corporately in collegiate athletics. I think maybe that might be something that they're making sure that does not happen. But I have a hard time believing. We all know Trev, that he would have his sights set on leaving Nebraska for any other job. That doesn't seem to be in his character or nature.
I don't think he had his eyes on another AD position.
Right.
But I think just because of his communication skills, because of everything that he brings to the table, just from the type of leader, the kind of leadership that he has shown at Nebraska, he's not just a desirable candidate for someone who's filling a college AD position. I mean, this guy could be a TV executive. He could work in an NFL front office. He could work, for a conference in an executive role. So Nebraska's safeguarding against any kind of temptation that might be out there and saying, all right, you get a $3 million retention bonus if you stick it out through 2031. And this is much needed stability for Nebraska in the sense that it has a new chancellor in Lincoln. It's about to have a new president reside over all of the University of Nebraska campuses. And you have this massive project announced at $450 million, but probably soon to go well above that, above $500 million, dealing with Memorial Stadium and renovation and surrounding areas. Nebraska can't afford to have turnover at the AD spot when this thing is going on. So it's quite a nice parting gift by Ted Carter, an early holiday present to Trev Alberts. And I'm sure there's some questions when you see just the optics of it, to have a president who's 6 weeks from leaving his post give the AD a contract like that. And we know at Nebraska that there have been prematurely awarded contract extensions that did not play out well for the university. I don't think this is one of those cases. I think Nebraska throughout and at the end of this deal for Trev Alberts will continue to be happy that he's the guy sitting in that chair.
And I think one of the most interesting little footnotes in that contract is some of the incentives for the Alberts family. $30,000 in travel expenses per year the university will pay for, as well as 35 hours of private plane time a year for personal use, which can carry over if they don't use all 35 hours. So say you use 20 in a year, you now get 45 hours the next year.
It's like vacation.
It's a nice it's a nice perk to have, and B, that's about all you need to go do some pre-scouting for every single Big Ten opponent. $30,000 plus the private flight time. You can buy seats in perfect view of the opposition sideline, get that video camera out, and do all the scouting you need.
That's where I thought you were going with that. I mean, in theory, if Trev wanted to go out and scout UCLA and USC, he could do that. I don't think he's going to be using the private air travel for that. Maybe a trip to Hawaii or the Caribbean or some other overseas destination, and that's great. These are the kind of things that high-level coaches and administrators have written into their contracts. And it's funny, if somebody's going to get paid millions of dollars, what do they need a $30,000 travel allowance for, or private jet time that they could always purchase on their own, with the great salary coming in? It's a perk of the job. And, it's a way for Nebraska to have a contract for Trev Alberts that competes with the contracts that are awarded to the top players, the biggest names in these kind of positions. As that television revenue continues to pour in and Nebraska reaps the benefits of the Big Ten $7 billion TV and multimedia rights package, it's in the ballpark to be able to do things like this for the people that it values the most, and clearly Trev Alberts is near the top of that list.
And I think he gets a Peacock subscription that he doesn't have to cancel.
That's the gift that keeps on giving, Clark.
I think he can watch it.
It is in there. It's in the fine print.
I think he can probably afford all of the streaming services if he wants to.
No two
you think Trev's a YouTube TV guy, or like what is he going old school? Like got cable? He has the cable line to come.
No, there's no way Trev's a cable guy that keeps. If any of the you guys have cable, God love you, but no. You're not interested in the rate's going to jump another $13.50 every 6 months.
I'm not trying to get into a conversation with Trev about his feelings on. The price increase for for Max or ESPN Plus, and how he feels about paying an extra $3.50 a month. If that
just let him know though that if he refers a friend, he might get a discount. So
right, yeah, right, yeah. He's probably going with like the 2-for-1 holiday special. There's probably a Black Friday deal out there.
He's
that
bundled
you can take advantage of.
No, I mean Trev's a guy. Remember seeing a thing on social media at Big Ten Media Days, and it was kind of a fashion deal where what are you wearing and where'd you get it, that type of deal. And Trev's like, well, I got my suit online and it was on sale.
I'm just imagining Trev going down to all the members of the football team being like, hey, if you guys get HBO Max, I'll refer it over. We'll both get half off for a month, guys. Like, this is the best.
They could share a sign-in.
That's pretty good. I love that. Well, let's...
great move. I mean, it's a great move to lock him up. I think.
I thought you were talking about sharing accounts.
No, not bad move. No. But I think
not anymore.
It's a great move. I mean, college sports is not done evolving, and there's going to be some dramatic stuff. And I don't think anybody could imagine Trev Alberts being anywhere other than the University of Nebraska, or being in a position that would benefit the University of Nebraska. It would be as odd to see him as the AD at some other place like it would have been to see Tom as the head coach at CU or something like that. And for Ted Carter to do that, and this is where Trev wants to be, and I think it's an important move for Nebraska's future, because leadership change in this era, when change is not done being made, would be, I think, disastrous.
You can't take him for granted. You shouldn't take him for granted, and this extension's well deserved. Let's spend a minute on Jim Harbaugh. Mitch, breaking news from your colleague at The Athletic, Stuart Mandel. Harbaugh and the Big Ten have agreed to disagree, but no litigation tomorrow.
Yeah, he didn't want to get Judge Judy involved, I guess, in this deal. Harbaugh's a big Judge Judy guy. I don't think we've discussed that. We should have discussed that long ago, how much he loves Judge Judy, and he sat in the in the gallery in the show before, and he mentioned Judge Judy, I believe, multiple times during his press conferences the past week. But it appears that Michigan has decided to just back off on this Big Ten imposed suspension. They're not going to fight it in court. This is kind of exciting because it's breaking news as we're recording the podcast. It's going to matter none at all when anyone is listening to it because they're all going to know what's already happened. But for us right now, this is new information. The big headline there is that he's going to miss the Ohio State game on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I don't think anybody's
he is.
Yeah,
sure
right.
He is.
Is he going to be in disguise? This is Jay. This is Jay Harbaugh. J. Harbaugh. That's what we need the credential on
Junior.
the sideline for.
Yeah. He's going to be dressed up as a Southern team quarterback on the sideline with his cleats.
Mitch, you don't think
they could sneak him into the stadium pretty easily. It is a Michigan home game, so he may be up in the booth, under a table or something like that. I don't know. There needs to be a camera on. Hey, is that game on? That game's on Fox, I assume.
Big noon.
They got to have a Harbaugh cam on that game. I don't know what it would take, but I mean, with the amount of money that Fox is paying the Big Ten to broadcast games, if they could get a camera on Jim Harbaugh during the game wherever he is, that would be must-see TV.
I'm just imagining him at a bar in downtown Ann Arbor, just hanging out with the fans. He's got his Excel sheets pulled up, tracking stuff from the game, just hanging out.
With a glass of vitamin D milk.
I mean, what do people want to see? Next week, we got Monday Night Football with the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Taylor Swift cam. I don't know if she's going to be at the game or not, but there'll still be a Taylor Swift cam.
Well, did you hear it's the first time expected Taylor Swift's parents are going to be at a game with the Kelsey parents? They're both going to be in the same suite. They're going to get a meeting.
Donna and Ed Kelsey are going to meet Taylor's folks.
Big story.
My goodness.
But Taylor's doing her show, what I hear.
She's not coming back off of two. I mean, she can take okay, whatever. But what would you rather? I would rather see the Jim Harbaugh cam during the Ohio State game 7 days a week and twice on Saturday than the Taylor Swift cam during a Chiefs game again, because that's old news. Somebody's got to get Fox to do this.
Knowing Harbaugh, which I don't, but I could just picture him on that afternoon in a pair of Converse All-Stars out mowing his yard in those polyester softball pants that everyone wore bike shorts back in the 1970s, mowing his yard and not even paying attention to the game. Or it could be the complete opposite, and he'll be standing on the sidelines, doing his thing there too. But I could see him just not even paying attention. That just seems to be something like what would be such a Harbaugh thing to do.
Well, better than a Harbaugh cam, let's get a Harbaugh cast. Like the Manning cast from Monday Night Football. Let's get a Harbaugh companion stream where you have Jim, you have his dad, you have them all sitting down watching the Michigan-Ohio State game and doing their commentary. I'd pay to see that. No?
No, I'm just trying to think, they're going to show a sideline shot of Ohio State and Jim's going to bark out what the play is.
Well, either that or let's have on as a guest Sharon Moore, and we'll talk to him during the game and tell him what plays to run. And
Jim's going to be raking leaves with his headset on, listening to the radio. And
listen to Alanis Morissette.
During halftime probably. But
man, imagine the Sharon Moore post-game interview after the Ohio State game. If the Wolverines win that, they're going to have like a 10-second delay or a 10-minute delay.
And a box of tissues.
Yes, make sure Taft has the tissues ready for the waterworks.
A 30-second moment of silence for
Jim.
Harbaugh.
But you have Harbaugh and the Big Ten resolving their pending litigation. The conference agreed to close its investigation. The university and Harbaugh agreed to accept the 3-game suspension. So quit snooping around.
Right. So does that mean that Michigan is just happy that the conference is going to stop looking into this because they're worried about what the Big Ten might find if they keep looking? So let's just take the 3 games. Maybe Michigan discovered some more things that Connor Stallions had done or somebody else did. The problem is I don't believe that this agreement has anything to do with the NCAA.
No, it doesn't.
They're going to continue their investigation. Michigan's just banking that the NCAA has dissolved by the time they complete the investigation, and there's no one left to punish them because they've been sued into oblivion or whatever other factors out there are going to lead to the demise of the NCAA. But you do kind of wonder like why Michigan took this step one day before this thing was going to go before a judge in Ann Arbor and seemingly was seemingly going to be ruled in Michigan's favor. It was hard to imagine an elected official in the state of Michigan ruling against Jim Harbaugh in this matter. And I figured he was going to be on the sidelines on Saturday at Maryland, and then, more important, on the sidelines next Saturday when Ohio State comes to Ann Arbor. But they dropped it, and, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions over the next few days that need to be answered as to why Michigan chose to take this path.
Maybe the case got transferred to a court in East Lansing.
That's very, very possible, but
no chance.
There's got to be some sort of card or leverage that the Big Ten has. I know they're the league versus Michigan, but they had to have something that they could play that made this game of chicken stop. The staring contest. It's the Average Joe Sports Show. It's episode 18. YouTube's where you find and watch the show, The AJ Sports Show. Twitter, The AJ Sports Pod. Give us a follow. Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, and Chris Schmidt. And as always, subscribe and get the podcast downloaded, Spotify and iTunes. Guys, games this weekend. Let's dive in. We'll round out with Nebraska, Wisconsin. We'll kick off with Utah, Arizona. Arizona's still hot. They're still winning. Walk-off over the Buffs. Utah's been bloodied a bit. It's only a 1-point spread, -1 Arizona, as it's in Arizona. I think Utah wins this. I think Utah's been through some battles. I think they're due. They're really good. They put up a lot of points against Washington last week, and I wasn't expecting that, so their offense got up off the mat. They'll need plenty of points against Arizona, but give me Utah outright. Arizona's really, really good, but I like Utah in this. Too much offense or enough offense for the Utes. Give me Utah 28-27.
I was impressed by Utah. I thought they'd go on the road and get beat up pretty good, but they put up a great fight at Washington. And I'm a big Utah fan, believer in Kyle Whittingham. The fact that his name is mentioned for A&M, I find preposterous. But anyway, I think maybe Arizona's flame is starting to diminish a little bit. They were so hot, but then to have to win it on a walk-off in Boulder, that seemed a little like a tentative performance by them. They didn't look like the team that was playing with more abandon when they started getting hot with a new quarterback. But I like Utah. I think they'll be strong down the stretch in the Pac-2, and I think they win. I'm with you. I think they win on the road.
Mitch, you like Utah or do you like Arizona?
Arizona's been playing some good football lately. I like what Jed Fish is doing there. Arizona and Arizona State have been interesting stories this year in the Pac-12 in their swan song. But no, I'm going the Utes. I think this is a team that, just because of the way Utah's built, it gets stronger as the year goes on, and had some dips for certain in the middle part of the season. But I don't see Arizona being too much of a challenge.
Elijah, you got a take here?
Well, if you look at the line, it's interesting because Arizona, the 1-point favorite. The money line is even, though, which makes you think Vegas might like Utah just a little bit more. So for that reason, I'm going to take Utah in a close one.
Tennessee's also been battered, a far cry from what they were a year ago. Georgia has to go into Rocky Top, dogs -10. Too much Georgia. I think it's a little bit tighter. I don't think the 10's a number I like, but I think Georgia probably wins this by a touchdown.
Well, after Missouri kicked Tennessee's ass defensively, apparently, according to Eli Drinkwater, so I'm not exactly sure Tennessee is back to 100% healthy. Missouri laid it on them pretty good, and I don't think Georgia has to watch a game to learn anything. Like, oh, well, we saw what Missouri did. I think Georgia wins this.
Handily, you like the 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, did you see what Missouri's coach went and said to Heupel after the game?
Saw a little bit of a clip.
When shook his head.
That handshake that didn't look pleasant.
He said, "We stand on business out here," which is the modern term for we're willing to throw down. We're willing to throw some hands here for you.
Is that interpreted? We took that personally.
It's I think
disrespect.
I mean,
and he showed him his watch.
Lines. Showing the watch.
Okay, Eli, enjoy the win. Move on.
What do you think?
Drinkwitz is just like, he's shockingly cool for what you would expect. At least I think that's the vibe that comes from him. You see him and you're just like, there's no way this guy can be a football coach, but he continues to, with the play of his team and then like some of the stuff that happens. I mean, he's got this real kind of cool edge to him that he's a very mysterious person to me, at least in the way that I see it.
He's the Mike McDaniel of college football.
Yeah. There you go. That's a great
guy from Miami, the Dolphins
way to put it. Oh yeah. I'm familiar. My kids are enamored with Mike McDaniel. They love watching his press conferences on YouTube and the stuff that he was doing. Do you see him when the Dolphins played in Germany against the Chiefs? I mean, he walked into the presser and walked up to the podium. First time he's been there in front of the German media and the Americans who had flown over. And he said, "I know what you guys are thinking. You didn't think I'd be this big in person." That was his opening statement. So I can see Drinkwitz doing something similar to that. I'm really interested in his career because, you underestimate him. But what he's got going at Missouri right now is impressive. And I wonder if Missouri will, it's an SEC school with all kinds of money. So you shouldn't doubt their ability to pay. I just wonder if Missouri is prestigious enough to keep him, or if he'll get lured away by someone bigger.
Well, and if Trev Alberts is listening, while he's still there, let's bring back the Missouri-Nebraska bell. I've been calling for it for years now. I missed the Missouri-Nebraska.
So get Mizzou on the non-conference.
Get him on the line. Let's get a non-conference game. You can put it at Arrowhead for all I care. I want to see that rivalry get run back at least once.
If Trev is listening, I want to know about his Netflix subscription. And if he's thinking about upgrading to the HD package now that he's got the new contract.
But, I love that.
As for Georgia, the Dogs are at the end of this stretch here where they're playing 3 consecutive ranked foes. They had Mizzou, Ole Miss, and now Tennessee, and they seem to be getting stronger as this thing goes on. So I think we're starting to see peak Georgia, and they will roll on the road.
If you would have asked me about this 3-game stretch 3 weeks ago, I would have said they're probably going to drop one. I don't think so anymore. I think they roll against Tennessee.
Well, Kansas State, maybe a peek ahead, or it's just a little bit of fight for Tech, but KU couldn't handle the success of the Oklahoma upset. KU still really talented. Love Coach Leipold. K-State, though, is favored on the road in Lawrence, -7.5. And it's really cool, and both these teams are good and relevant with this rivalry, and it's just happened a handful of times.
Just like it's always been.
In basketball?
No, when they were
Sunflower State, the Sunflower Showdown, man.
When there was 0-10
against with Ohio State, Michigan, USC, UCLA. I mean, so much history with that.
Wasn't there a game where they were both like 0-10 playing at the end of the year in the old Big 8 or early Big 12 days, and like the final score was 3-2 or so? I don't know. It was awful.
It was awful.
Yeah,
I like Kansas just because they're at home. I'm going to go with them. And the problem, though, is they're also dealing with a third-string quarterback starting on Saturday. But KU seemed to manage their quarterback injury situation well this year.
Does Kansas have any – how have they been playing, once again, with Leipold's name coming up for every job?
Well, they beat Oklahoma.
Do you think that has any effect on it? Yeah, that's – I wonder, because his name was Michigan and Michigan State, and now it's back with the A&M stuff again. And I just find that every week they got to play with it, and he just continues to coach on. I like Kansas State. I think they've been kind of an under-the-radar team, believe it or not, this year. I like them.
It's the coveted coaches bowl. I mean, these are the two coaches that their names, they just come up for every job, whether they're legitimate candidates or not. When the initial lists come out, whenever a coach gets fired, and we're getting to that time of year, there were 3 or 4 of them within the past week. Like any job that comes open, it's like, well, you got to look at Lance Leipold and Chris Kleiman. And, the thing is, Kleiman, I don't think is going anywhere. I really don't. I think it probably would have happened by now if he was going to do that. So, hey, Kirk Ferentz could retire, and they could offer Iowa could offer an AD coach package to Gene Taylor and Chris Kleiman, and I think they're still going to stay put in Manhattan. So if they're not taking that, then probably nothing. So I like K-State for that reason right there. Not that reason, but I like K-State to win this game. Schmidt, you mentioned the quarterback woes with the Jayhawks. I think that's too much to overcome against the in-state rival.
I'm going to take Kansas State to cover. They're 6-2 against the spread this year. I think they continue on with that. I think they get them by 10, 34-24.
All right, so I am in the old corner by myself here with the Tennessee cover and with KU. Guys, let's wind down with Nebraska and Wisconsin. That line has been chopped in half, or substantially anyway, from 7 down to 4.5, 3.5 in some spots. What do you think about the Big Red, Mr. Doleman?
Which Big Red?
Well, the one you cheer for.
There's only one Big Red in this game.
All right. Objectively speaking, I think this game ends in a tie. I think it's going to come down to which team plays the best defense along the front.
Okay.
Can Nebraska run the ball on Wisconsin's front? I think Nebraska's offensive line, and Matt Rule said it the other day, that it was the best game that he's seen the offensive line play. I think that it's going to be on them, regardless of who the quarterback is, because I don't think Nebraska can't have confidence in its pass game. They can't even fake it anymore. So how well does Nebraska run the ball against Wisconsin's front? Can they turn out 5+ yards per carry like they were doing against Maryland before they threw the ball at the end? I think Emmett Johnson's been a real bright spot for that offense. He's really matured and had turned in the run of the year. But Nebraska, the passing game is mystifying. And the same thing, I think, for Wisconsin. Do they want to run the ball? How well can they do that against Huntmaker and Robinson? So, therefore, I think it ends in a tie.
Okay.
Take the unders.
Take the unders. Tie ball game, even though there's no more ties. Mitch, you got a feel?
I like that. Well, I made various predictions on this game through the week, and I need to stick. I want to be consistent and stick with what I said. Not that I don't believe in what I've been saying, but I feel like I was pressured early in the week to come up with a decision here on this game when I didn't fully know what was happening for Nebraska at quarterback, and I still don't fully know or even partially know what's happening for Nebraska.
You won't know until the fourth quarter.
Right. Exactly. I mean, they're going to have a starting quarterback, and that doesn't mean that he'll be the quarterback in the second quarter, whoever that guy is. It's going to be one of those games where you're going to have both teams in the teens, and like the strangest score that could possibly happen, I think, is the one that it's going to be like 19-18 or 18-11, something like that. I'm going to say 18-13, and I've not told you who I think is going to win, but Nebraska here. This is against all common sense. Nebraska is going to find a way in this game to be even in the turnover battle. And that will be such a morale boost for the Huskers, who are -5 with 8 turnovers in the past 2 weeks, that alone is going to be enough to get Nebraska this much-needed 6th victory that will set off celebrations from Holdridge to Hastings to the middle of downtown Omaha. Bowl eligibility is going to be here. Nebraska wins it in a strange score fest, 18-13.
Hey, speaking of the turnovers real quick, Nebraska had another interception against Maryland that got called back because of a penalty.
Yeah, 2 picks in one drive.
One that Nebraska threw.
Right. Yeah. There were 5 in that game, and one of them got called back.
I'm not going to lie. It seemed like for most of that game, the officials were doing everything they could to help Nebraska. There were a lot of instances.
Even the delay of game penalty.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Maryland did right. No, there's no flag for delay of game. Wait. There is a flag
upon further review.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard one to miss. Like, there's a clock that gets to 0, but no, like that was a game where, and not to say that Maryland didn't deserve it, but it seemed that everything as far as the flags were going Nebraska's way, of course, until the one that they had to call, the DPI on the last drive. But
we digress.
Nebraska, it's an even contest, like 2-2 on the turnovers or 1-1, and that's going to just do wonders for their Nebraska's ability to win the game.
I am going to change course. I have picked against Nebraska the last several weeks, at least 2. I'm going to go Nebraska, and I'm going to say the Huskers get it done 13-9.
I like that score.
Run game, just enough pressure, and the turnover key. I think Purdy will spark. I think he'll look good early. I think they'll hang on late.
You think there's ever been a 15-11 game?
It's been a.
This could be it.
There's been an 18-16 game.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. No, that was a memorable game, Schmidt.
No,
Are you talking about the 94 Orange Bowl?
Score.
Yeah.
The score was crazy, though.
Yeah.
Guys, before we get out of here, I do have to lock in my prediction. And I think in a November night game on national television, the Big Ten West is going to Big Ten West. It's going to look pretty damn ugly throughout. And one thing about Wisconsin's offense, whenever they're forced to be one-dimensional, whether it be when Malusi went out, now with Braylon Allen dealing with some injury concerns, whenever they can't run the football, their offense has been pretty gross to watch. They get some yards. They struggle to finish off drives. They struggle to get into the red zone. They can pick up a couple of first downs usually, but then they'll get themselves behind the chains. I think their offense looks ugly. Even if Braylon Allen is healthy, I don't think he's going to find much success against this Husker front seven. So I think we're going to have a one-dimensional Wisconsin offense that's going to struggle to move the football, at least into red zone, into scoring territory. I think, though, Nebraska's going to help them out with some turnovers. I think it's a low-scoring football game, kind of along with what Schmidt said. And I think Nebraska does, in fact, get it done at Camp Randall. It's been feeling like Nebraska's been getting closer and closer every single time they've gone to Camp Randall recently. I think they finally flipped the script. I think they get a win. I think it's gross. I think it's ugly. I think it's low-scoring. Huskers 17, Wisconsin 13.
Okay, 17-13, outright win. That'll wrap up for episode 18 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, The AJ Sports Show. Find us on Twitter, The AJ Sports Pod, and Spotify or iTunes. Either way, both those platforms where you can hear the show. We'll talk to you next week as we get you ready for Nebraska, Iowa.